Welcome to another episode of Actually, You Can. I'm your host, Myth, and today I'm thrilled to have another very special guest with us. Arkadiusz Bryl is the founder and financial advisor for Real Knowledge Diverse Solutions. Arkadiusz is on a mission to transform our understanding of money, how it works, how it feels, and how we talk about it. With his impressive resume, including founding and directing multiple advisory businesses and consulting for some of the world's largest firms, he brings a refreshingly unique perspective to the subject of wealth creation. As you'll soon learn, Arkadiusz isn't your typical financial advisor. Instead, he empowers you to become your own advisor. In this episode, we dive into everything from his personal journey with wealth, where you can go for finance advice you can actually trust, and the vital importance of aligning your wealth building approach with your purpose. If you're seeking to create wealth in today's world, then this episode is a must listen, because actually, you can. Hi, Arkadiusz, and welcome to the show. I'm so stoked to have you here.
Oh, that's my cue. Sorry. Hey, Biff, how are you? Thank you for having me. I'm super excited. With the countdown, I was like, all right, let's go. I'm excited to have this conversation.
You didn't even pick up on the brief that I gave you earlier, which was the say something about me being awesome and then say that you're stoked.
Sorry.
So I think,
Sorry. Yes, you are. You are definitely awesome. But I think rather than saying it, people are going to think that it's prompted. So I'd rather people discover that throughout this conversation, especially if it's the first time that they ever hear from you or about you. And I think they'll identify that really quick. So no need to even say it.
That's very kind of you. And so enough about me. We're going to talk about all things wealth creation today, especially during what some would call some really challenging financial conditions. And so before we jump into the meat of today, I'd love to learn more about yourself. Who is Arkadiusz Bryl, and what has been your money journey to get you where you are today?
How far do you want to go?
Take us back right to the beginning when you first were like, money is my thing.
Money is my thing. What if I told you money is not my thing?
Then let's start there.
Let's start there. I guess so. Grew up in Cabramatta, which is in Western Sydney, in a little 2-bedroom unit. My mum wanted me to be surrounded, not in that area. At that time when I grew up, which was in the 90s, I guess, I'm 30. So we grew up in a really rough time in Cabramatta when there was, a lot of gangsters, a lot of ice dealers and all that sort of thing. So it was an intense time, so 5T was sort of live in action, which was a Vietnamese gang that really sort of made Cabramatta the place that it was at the time. And my mum didn't want me to go to school there. So she was working in the city at Broadway in a textiles factory. So she actually made me catch a train to the city every day. So I would wake up at 6 a.m. in the morning as a kid. So kindergarten till year 6, I went to Ultimo Public School. And, I was surrounded by kids that had money. I would walk through, what's funny now, I would walk past a park that I drive past every morning to get into my office in the city. And, I have this like visualization of me as a kid being like, I wish that I worked here, and now it's just like driving past every morning on my way to work. So I guess my money journey really started there as just seeing what money meant and, people having money to buy lunch every day. And, my mum did the best that she could, but, I would have the egg sandwiches with mustard inside them and schnitzel because, Polish background, first generation Australian. And then leading towards that, I guess, started my first business in high school. In year 8, went to business studies thinking that they would teach me how to start a business. And the teacher said, business studies is not about starting a business. It's how to succeed in the HSC. So I was like, oh, well, that's shit. So I went to, I think the ATO at the time in Parramatta, caught a train there, registered a business name and an ABN, which was Fix Me Garage, which is where I imported Japanese car parts, funny enough, and used to sell them on a forum. And then, I guess I just fell into business that way and have pretty much remained self-employed for the large majority of my life since that moment. And, in terms of how I got into financial advice, I was actually selling door-to-door Foxtel, funny enough, when I was 18, became the youngest appointed team leader at the time. And I had a team. And one day I knocked on the door of a lady's home and sold her Foxtel essentially. And she's like, come back when my husband's home. And I did. And the husband quizzed me about every single contract detail. And I just answered everything like that. And he's like, you're really honest. Come in. And then he was like, how would you like to make $5,000 a week selling insurance? I was like, sure. He turned out to be the COO of one of Australia's largest and still Australia's largest insurance companies. He offered me a job, paid for my flights, funny enough, to Melbourne, paid for my education, like literally covered it all. I became the youngest appointed advisor in Australia. And yeah, just that journey took me from there, from insurance advice to, starting my own business in Tasmania, to falling into advice, to financial planning, to the studies, and then, starting this business 7 years ago. So I sort of fell into it. I wouldn't say money is my thing. I believe that I'm good at helping people find their questions, and I'm good at helping people understand. And I think I understand the struggles because I've been in bad debt. I've made mistakes. I've bought the wrong property. I've done everything. And, as I build with my clientele, we grow together. And I think that's what this business has been. And that's what it always will be. So I guess that gives you a little bit of a story about who I am and how my money journey started. Because I can't give you a precise moment. It's sort of a blur of events from the age of, a kid walking to school to in Ultimo from
Yeah.
Cabramatta. Yeah.
And it sounds like it's been this whole journey of different experiences. And so looking back on that, how did you decide which experiences to follow? So obviously you started your first business in year 8 and then you ended up doing Foxtel and insurance and then having a business in Tasmania. For someone, it could seem very random. What was it for you?
Very random. I guess I've just always had this thing where if I have an idea and I enjoy it and no one else, if everyone else tells me it's a bad idea, I go do it. Such as moving to Tasmania and starting an insurance company called Insurance Tasmania, funny enough. So same thing of moving back to New South Wales and starting an insurance company called Insurance New South Wales. I think, I think early in my life, especially when starting the car business, people told me you shouldn't do what you love. You shouldn't mix business and pleasure because that was just the reality back then. You didn't, right? So I guess I learned that I should just do things that I love. And when I didn't love it anymore, I would stop quite quickly. And I guess when I have an idea, it is random. And I guess I'm good at executing on the randomness of things. And if they work and they feel right, I keep going. And I guess that's where I've ended up today is if everyone usually tells me it's a bad idea, it usually means that it's going to work. It's just going to take a lot of time. It's going to be really fucking hard. And it's going to make me very tired. And I guess that's where I've ended up today. So how do I pick the ones that are most random and that are the hardest and that everyone tells you not to do? My experience is you should do exactly that because actually you can, you know,
Thanks for the little plug there.
all right.
And so has there been a time where someone's gone, this is a really bad idea, and you've gone to execute and you're like, actually, this is a really bad idea? Or has there been something innate within you that has just made it work out?
I think the idea has been good, but my execution or my trust in people has been wrong. So I tend to see the good too much and still tend to have faith in the person that I believe someone can be. And that might not necessarily be who they want to be, but they're not willing to execute. So that seems to get me in trouble more than anything else. In business, even with clients, just them telling me that they want to achieve something and me putting in the effort and them not really wanting it. It's what they think they want, but it's not really what they want. And I have this belief in that person. And the same goes for business partners and all that sort of thing,
yeah, you believe the best in someone until they prove you otherwise. And sometimes they do prove you otherwise. But in the circumstances where they have proven you right, what have been some of the coolest and most proudest achievements you've done based on someone going, that's a really bad idea?
The event on Wednesday. Yeah. Looking back at 7 years ago, everyone said I was stupid for just looking after young people. So if you go back, I'm 30, my age bracket is 25 to 35 usually. So, when we were all 22 years old, everyone said I was dumb for chasing those clients and trying to build a business out of those clients because there was no money in it. But now we're the people that everyone wants. The large majority of, especially financial planning models and mortgage models, etc., they're after our niche, our client that has been with us for the last 8 years. So even a year and a half ago, when I said I'm only going to help first home buyers and first home buyers only, people said I was stupid because there's no money in it because first home buyers aren't serious. And then on Wednesday, we had a room of 40 people that are serious, high income, high deposit, guarantors, good clients. And, like, I got emotional at the start of the event. Like, I actually almost cried. Like, I caught myself 2 or 3 times because I had this vision of this event, but I genuinely didn't think it was going to happen till maybe earliest December. And it just did. And I think, a lot of people doubted it. Even one of the presenters doubted it, and he doubted that everyone would follow through after the event. And pretty much every single person, but 2 people, has proceeded already to a pre-approval to proceeding with their purchasing journey. So yeah, that was pretty special. So that was definitely I think that is definitely the highlight of my career. So Wednesday. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think just that being one of your most proudest achievements says a lot about the sort of person that you are. And I know we mentioned just before that you're not a typical financial advisor. So what sort of financial advisor are you? How would you describe yourself?
A good one. Um, if as you know, like if you want to come to us for advice, we're not the right fit. If you want to come to us for us to tell you what to do, we are not the business for you. But if you want to come to us so we can help you understand your options, empower you in your decisions, and really help you become educated so you can become self-fulfilled, you'll come back to us for the harder problems. And I think a lot of it, like, we're very fortunate, knock on wood, that we don't have a need to charge ongoing advice fees. We don't need to try and sell someone superannuation, plug in a percentage just to be able to stay afloat. And I think the large majority of advice focuses on that. The large majority of financial advisors focus on shares and superannuation. I wonder why. It's because they charge an ongoing fee out of your stuff rather than actually helping you build real wealth. And, in our opinion, real wealth is built through establishing a principal place of residence. So establishing a home as best as possible, and then using that as your base to build investments and, share portfolios if that's appropriate for you. And but most importantly, just empowering you as an individual in your financial education and letting you pave the way to what you feel is right. So I think that's where it's going to sound cheesy, but I guess that's how we're different. And our model is about options rather than advice. There's always a time for advice, as you know. There's always a point where, someone say, what do you think? And I'll say, this is why I think this. But that might not suit you. You might go, I get it makes sense, Arkadiusz, but I really love this suburb. All right, what's the compromise? Right? So I guess I hope that gives a bit of insight there. Oh my God.
Technical
Yeah.
difficulties. The phone was so inspired that it fell off the
I
table.
guess that's where we are. I feel like I'm talking a lot, but I hope that I'm trying to provide as much value. So I hope that provides value.
Most definitely. And I think, full disclosure, I met Arkadiusz about a year ago now. Holy cow. Because I sought financial support from, I guess, a typical mortgage broker who said that I was unable to get pre-approval to purchase a house. And I think it was a 30-minute strategy session later. I think within 5 minutes of the call, Arkadiusz very politely said, that's bullshit. And then within a couple of months, my partner and I had purchased a home together. So I feel like in exactly what you just shared, it's a different approach. And I think what you really did for us in that moment was really empowered us with our current situation, what our options were, as opposed to shutting the doors on us, which I really appreciated. And so, what appeals to you most about working with that younger demographic, the 25 to 35-year-olds?
I think it's just a relatable journey. Like we're on the same path and we go through the same problems and we feel the same pain. Like, don't get me wrong. Like I work with a 55-year-old woman that's very wealthy and, she's built her wealth with me since the start of her journey. But, we have a vibe together. So I'm not saying that I don't. And, I'm working with a 19-year-old individual at the moment. So I think it's just more so the synergies and the relatability. And, I can make jokes about Bebo and, like we can, shit on generations younger than us and older than us. And I think, if you want to have kids and we want to have kids, like we understand that synergy. Whereas talking to a 4-year-old couple with 2 children that are, on a different wavelength than me, I think I can't provide genuine, honest understanding of someone's circumstances. And I think when giving advice, understanding a client's circumstances and their world is more important than anything else. It's more important than the advice itself. I think it's just relatability and, really being confident and honest about understanding someone. The 5-year backwards and 5-year forward rule, in my opinion, it applies in a lot of circumstances in service-based businesses at least. But, I might be wrong. I guess it applies a lot in my industry. So I think it might be relatable to similar service-based industries as well.
Yeah, most definitely. Even speaking from personal training industry, if you've been through an injury, you can speak to that. Or if you're developing something yourself, you can speak exactly to that. So I think there's a lot of synergies there. And so on a similar note, I'm interested to understand, what does wealth mean to you?
What does wealth mean to me personally? I think every time I get asked that question, it means like my mum having a backyard. And there's a level of wealth that I'd have to create to make that plausible and possible. So for me, like I can definitely buy a property and move her in that has a backyard, but there are elements of things that I'd have to achieve to do that. And I think they wouldn't make sense. So I know what that end goal means that I have to achieve and where I have to be financially and where I have to be in my life and how I have to position, my dad and my siblings and everything else. So it's not a number, it's a point in my life. I guess that's what wealthy means to me. It's about everything that allows me to reach my end goal to be aligned as best as possible. And for me, it actually means that I can catch an Uber to work and drive into the city and pay for the parking every day. And, it's little things. Like for me, that's more important than, this is a Hermes tie, but I paid $15 for it on Facebook Marketplace. Like I'm not going to go spend $200 on a tie. It's just not me, but no one will know unless you're listening to this podcast, So I think it's about what is wealthy to you and what is wealthy to me. I think for me, it's everything coming together to reach that end goal and constantly shifting what those things are.
I think a beautiful example of that, just to show that you're a man of your word and your values, is recently I heard that your mum needed some balcony renovations. Are you able to share with the listeners what you did to ensure that those renovations got done?
Mm, yeah. Um, like when my mum calls me, you're gonna make me sad. uh, like I come from an Eastern European background, so like, you get 18 on a test and you come top in the school, she'd be like, why did you get 20? So lately my calls always compromise of, my mum always complaining about little things. And because she lives in a unit, the balusters, like the balcony, the railings, they've been deteriorating over time and the strata won't let us individually repair it because it's just a stupid old strata contract with stupid owners. So yeah, I had to buy one of the units in the complex to essentially become a majority vote to have the balconies repaired. So, you know, it's not like, it's not the smartest investment to buy that unit, but to me, it meant that, I had a level of control over that building, which I might sound like a capitalist pig there, but, sometimes you have to do that. And, I had to buy a unit in there to, it's beneficial for me because, if I have majority shareholding, there are benefits in that in the long term. But yeah, that was an immediate win, and being able to repair those railings, and yeah, had to take a compromise to purchase that unit, and it doesn't cash flow as well as it should. And the equity position isn't exactly where I want it to be. But yeah, my mum not calling me and complaining about the balcony is a pretty big thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that shows, you mentioned just wealth, the definition of wealth and wealthy is so individual, and it is important that it aligns with your values, because I think, you hear stories of people who are millionaires and who are still miserable, and money is not going to make you happy, but it can enable you to do things that do make you happy, just as that. So I think that's really important to notice. And how do you ensure that you understand your clients' values when they come to meet you, and how they're making decisions that aligned with their
I
values?
think, you know, we do something called a strategy call, which unfortunately is booked out for the rest of the year, so there's no call to action here, to anyone listening. Unfortunately, I can't do that call with you. But, the biggest thing is on that call, I actually just listen. And, it's a 40-minute phone call. And every single time on the back end of that phone call, the clients are like, thank you. I learned so much. I found so much value. And all I did literally was make that person tell me about their goals, their needs, their objectives, their financial circumstances. And while they do that, I get them to write it out on a piece of paper. So I think, even as an individual, the key to understanding your goals, your needs, your objectives before even anyone else understands them is to just sit down and write them out on a piece of paper. And it's disgustingly scary how many people don't do that. And the fact that people need to pay me $250 for a phone call to have that conversation. You don't need to pay a professional to have that conversation. You just need to have that conversation with you, a piece of paper and a pen. Where am I? Where do I want to be? What's the route to that? And I think that's what a good advisor should do for 80% of their time, is redefining that and redefining those questions. And, you can be your own advisor for that 80%, and then seek someone that knows how to answer those questions. And Google is pretty good at it.
And so I can imagine, similar to the fitness industry, the world of finance isn't something we're necessarily taught in detail at school. And so when you come to these strategy sessions, how much, I guess, how much is people's goals influenced by what they think they should be doing and what's being out in the media?
I mean, you just shouldn't be listening to the media, plain and simple, especially when it comes to property. Like the media said, we're all going to die from COVID. Yeah. I want everyone to remember that. Like, we're all going to die. Okay. We didn't die. So the media definitely has an agenda. And I think that's very clear. And it's becoming more clear in time. And people posting on social media and Twitter and discussing things also have an agenda. So you always need to keep that in mind. So you should limit how that affects you and find your trusted news source and information. My biggest thing is parents, I think, is parents pushing someone to buy, or parents trying to control a purchase, or parents telling someone that this is the property that you need to buy. You need to buy in this suburb because I bought 20 years ago and it's quadrupled in price, and they're all too for you. And I think it's just a different time, clients thinking that they need to pay off home loans because that's what the parents said that you need to do. Just little things like that. So I think definitely a big influence, but I think for the most part, actually, I think a lot of our younger clients are actually quite open. So maybe I'm just very lucky where people are actually coming to us with very clear motivation and goals without being persuaded too much. So maybe we just attract that level of client or that audience. But yeah, so if you are being pushed by your parents or by media, just sit down with a pen and paper with your mum or dad or whoever's influencing you and say, what would happen if I actually put this into practice? And maybe that will help you not be persuaded too much because it doesn't align with your end goal, whatever that is. So I hope that answers that question. It's a hard one to answer because I don't really experience that too much, apart from the parents thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and I can see why you wouldn't, because the quality of your content and just the nature of your content is very, it isn't necessarily very directive, like this is what you should do. It's like, here's the information, here's some suggestions, but it's really empowering for the person to make their own decision. And so it's no wonder that you attract that sort of
Thank you.
clientele.
That's the goal.
And I'll link all these, all the social media and where you can find all
Thank
this
you.
information below. But if someone is looking for some, where should someone go for trusted advice? Is there such thing as free trusted advice, unless it's your social media? Or where can someone go to get advice they trust?
I think legislation is what is factual. So if you're looking to buy a property, the government releases information regarding what grants you're eligible for and you're not eligible for. That is the information that you can trust. Like, to give you context, and I'm very skeptical of professionals genuinely understanding things. So what you as an individual need to do, especially if you're working with brokers and accountants, a lot of brokers actually aren't educated enough to provide you advice. And this is why we have a financial planning and finance business, because as you know, our broker, like Shion, is phenomenal. Our brokers are phenomenal, but they don't have the authority to provide you a certain level of advice. So to give you context to this, I recently posted a video of me interviewing a gentleman on the street about buying a property and turning it into a principal place of residence. And legislation states, it's clear legislation on the ATO website, that if you live in a property and you define it as your principal place of residence, even if you move out and you rent it out, if you run it as an investment and you sell that place, you actually get any of the capital gains tax free. I had someone DM me being like, "You are wrong. I am an accountant. You are providing people bad advice." I was like, "No problem, man. Here's a link to the legislation. Tell me what you think." He blocked and deleted me. So the issue is, even professionals don't take the time to look at legislation. So you need to, unfortunately, question the advice being given to you and fact checking it with legislation, with a bank. So when your mortgage broker provides you loan documents, don't just sign them, even if they're from us. Read them, please. You are applying for a loan. So read the technical documents, read the insurance product disclosure statement. Don't just trust the software generated tool that your advisor gives you. Trust is a strong word, Myth. And, even if you're using us, I tell clients, I don't think you should trust me. I think you need to take the information that I give you and make sure it suits you. Read all the documentation and let me know if you have any questions. So trust is a strong word in any industry, whether it's a physio that you're going to or a doctor. If a physio says, "Arkadiusz, you have an injury here, this is what you do," I will fact check that. Right? Don't just stick needles in my back, hoping for the best. I will fact check it. Can you explain why this injury happened? Can you explain why this muscle is doing this in a particular way? Can you explain why this exercise will help me? Because that knowledge creates trust. So no direct answer to that, because I think trust is a strong word, because you are you and you understand yourself better than anyone else. So you need to ensure that the advice given to you aligns with what you are doing, and whether there are facts out there, legislation, mortgage documentation, product disclosure statements, that actually tick what the advice is. Like, is this factual? Is this person telling the truth?
Yeah, and so what I'm getting from that as well is that if you're serious about wealth creation or any area in finance, it's, I think it's really easy if something seems really complex and overwhelming just to outsource and go, I'm working with Arcadius. He knows what's best. I'm paying him as the expert. I'm just going to trust his advice. When in reality, you're also giving away your power to someone who you might have met 30 minutes ago as well. Or if you're serious about something, you really need to commit and invest the time to developing an understanding of it. So if anything happens, you're not a victim of the consequences. You're actually able to own your role in whatever happens as a result, whether it's good or bad. But it sounds like in the finance space, there's really room for people to upskill their knowledge so they can make really informed decisions as opposed to trusting someone to make informed decisions for them.
100%. And like the thing is this, like you, even if the professional you're dealing with, even if you sue them or anything like that, you've still made the mistake of trusting that advice. So there's obviously a lot of good advisors, a lot of good brokers out there, but if you just take the info and just sign the document and go buy the house at auction on the weekend, you are still in that house. You are still then having to pay the mortgage repayment while you're in a battle trying to go, oh my God, I can't afford this repayment, but I had a pre-approval, so I thought I could afford it. Like you need to still go, thank you for the advice. I need to make sure that it's right for me. Not just, oh my God, Arcadius, this is amazing. I'm just going to go buy a house. And you're right, I can afford these repayments. It's like, no, you go take those repayments, act like you have a loan, and then let me know how it feels. So I guess the simplest answer to that, Myth, is someone is pushing you and telling you that you have to sign now or trust me. Like if you hear the words trust me, don't trust someone. If you hear the words of here's the advice, here's the information, let me know which one works for you. If you have any questions, that is probably a good indicator if that person can be trusted. It doesn't mean that you should just trust them straight away, but they can be trusted. Because at the end of the day, it's your life, it's your financial future, it's your decision, it's your superannuation account, it's your mortgage, it's your house that you've bought, it's your share in your portfolio. So you need to ensure that it aligns and it makes sense.
Most definitely. And it's even just having the knowledge that it's okay to ask questions. And to your point, it's sort of expected that you will ask questions of your advisor.
100, like I always get, I know this might sound like a dumb question. It's like, no, it's not a dumb question. But if you ask me the
Was
same
that me?
questions,
Yeah.
no, definitely not. Definitely not. Yeah. And like, I love when clients have questions. If clients have questions, it means that they're serious, they've reviewed the information, and they're ensuring that they understand it. What's an alarm bell for me is someone that just says yes, 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 and just proceeds. I'm like, this person is just trusting me, and I'm not sure if this actually aligns with their goals. So if your advisor is annoyed at you for asking questions, they're probably not the right fit.
Yeah, 100%. And so I feel silly saying this now because you've just said ignore the media. But in my complete ignorance of, I guess, what's going on in the financial world at the moment, if I was just to look at the media, I would hear that we're in an economic crisis. Everyone save your money. We're not going to be able to afford our mortgage repayments. What's your view on the current financial situation and what real challenges are your clients experiencing in these conditions? Are they experiencing challenges? I should say too.
Honestly, no. So I think banks are bullying people with these rate rises at the moment. CBA just posted a ridiculous profit for the quarter. I wonder why that is. So banks are structured to make money, and the government is structured in a way to ensure that the economy is okay. And with the rate rises, it's a ticket to try and combat inflation, and it's not working because we have something called NOM, like the Cookie Monster, nom 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 nom, which is net overseas migration. And the issue is I think a lot of countries are currently outsourcing their inflation to Australia, which is causing us issues. We predicted 250,000 people to come into Australia during COVID. That number's actually hit 400,000. It's a big problem, big underestimate. I was listening to the radio this morning, and governments are lobbying to try and have people rent out rooms in their house to internationals. So there's definitely an undersupply of property. So is it hard? I think the question is define hard. In my opinion, COVID was hard. A lot of people weren't able to work. A lot of people didn't have the ability to actually earn money. But let's set that aside because not all of us have the ability to earn high income to combat the rising inflation, all that sort of thing. But look, I think in terms of mortgages, banks are bullying. So, we're currently riding the variable rate wave with all of our clients. So we're putting our trust that banks are going to drop their fixed rates. And we're already seeing that. To give you context, one of the big banks has just dropped their fixed rates, and we see that continuing. So we think banks are just bullying. So, and I think, I don't want to sound like the biggest conspiracy theorist ever. We're very confident as a business that banks and media are linked. So the fear tactic of rate rises is trying to lock people into high fixed rates over 3 years to ensure that banks continue to make a significant profit. Hashtag no advice. So, all these conversations are general in nature. So please ensure that they're right for you. So ASIC, if you're listening to this, or if you're in the room behind Miffy somewhere, this conversation has been created to provoke thought, right? However, all the things that we're going to discuss, all the strategies, all the opinions are things that we do and implement every single day with all of our clients. So everything that you hear today is something that we do. Miff, I think maybe some of your audiences are going to hate me for this. I think we're in a very fortunate time at the moment. I think we have the ability to earn money in ways that others don't. I'll use my support staff, Aiden, as an example. He's 19 years old. He makes some money here and then he goes, works at Toddy's after hours and serves cocktails, and he's making like 30 something dollars an hour. So I think there's an opportunity to make money. People say there's a rental crisis. Once again, I'm going to get smashed for this, but there's not a rental crisis. There's a I want to live in this suburb crisis. I'll use Sydney as an example. Yes, Sydney is expensive, but you're earning more money. You can go to suburbs further out. It's just going to increase your travel time. I don't feel sorry for you. I'm a boy from Cabramatta that used to catch a train at 6 a.m. in the morning to go to school in the city. It's a choice. Yeah. So people are going to hate me for that, and that's cool. But I think you have a choice to understand your circumstances. You have a choice to use the information that is around you or hire a panel of professionals to ensure that you are in the best position possible. Same as you can't afford a gym, you can do push-ups, you can go to the park, you can run. When I was starting this business and I had no money, I used to carry Makona in little Glad wrap packets. It looked like black crack. Yeah. And I used to go to 7-Eleven, ask them if I can pour hot water in my keep cup. And that's how I used to drink coffee every day. So you can make a compromise, but I always had a nice suit. I always had a 3-piece. I always got my fortnightly or weekly haircut because I knew that provided me the value. That was able to help me build my wealth. So for anyone listening to this, life's going to be fucking hard for the next 5 years. I think the economy is in trouble. I think in that there's opportunity. So as capitalist pig as it sounds, is we were telling our clients that we can't wait for this to happen because people are silly. People don't get advice, and we can capitalize on the opportunity of buying shares at a discount, buying property with leverage opportunities, ensuring that we don't just transact to transact, asking for a pay rise, ensuring that HEX is paid off appropriately before inflation hits it at 7.1%, which is happening. So I think, Biff, I'm the wrong person to fall into the life is hard conversation. I think not everyone has that opportunity, especially if you're disabled or you're a single mom or you're a nurse that needs to live next to the hospital because you do shift work. I empathize with that a lot. But from July 1, there are a lot of incentives coming out with the new budget to assist those people to buy their home. You can buy with friends. You can have a 5% deposit. with no lender's mortgage insurance. If you're a single parent, you can buy with a 2% deposit and the government will help you with the rest. So there's a lot of assistance. You just have to understand what's suitable. I think you just have to wake up in the morning and say, I'm healthy, I'm alive, I have the capacity to earn money. Let's fucking go for my goal. So no sympathy, unfortunately. I'm sorry.
And that's pretty much why you're on this podcast, because it's called the Actually You Can, not Actually I Can't.
Yeah.
And I
Okay.
think you've hit the nail on the head there. It's like we're very, chances are if you're listening to this, you have access to tech. And that means you're very fortunate and privileged position. And to your point, you have the ability to create wealth. It might look different to what you had expected or what you had hoped, but if you truly want something and you're really motivated and you're really connected to your values, then that end goal is still possible. Just the journey to get there might look different. And to your point, when you said the next 5 years would be hard, it's like, okay, we know this. Like there's no point complaining about it, because that's not going to put us into action or get us closer to our goals. It's coming to that place of acceptance and go, cool, I can do hard things. So how can we get through this next bit? So I'm interested to know, when you mentioned that it's hard, in what ways do you think it might be hard for people over the next 5 years?
I think to experience growth, you have to take sacrifice. And, I mentioned at the start of this podcast and this conversation that, I was in a room with 40 people and I got teary. And, like, I've been in this business for a long time. And, when I said that I invested in clients when it didn't make sense, I didn't make any money for 5 years in this business, at all. And because I knew that the clients that would grow with me would be the clients that everyone wanted. And I just trusted it. So, I finally got into a position where $250 for a phone call, minimum $550 for a strategy session. But literally before anyone would sit with me face to face, they were spending $1,000. Right. So I got into this position where it booked out. I had a record month in January, February, March, and I was tipped this month to make $50,000 in additional revenue. And I really needed that 50 grand myth. Like I don't want to disclose personal circumstances and family health matters, but I really needed that money. And it's going to sound like a lot of money because it is, but for the circumstances and the money that I haven't made, I needed it. In that room, I literally looked at 50 grand and I let go because I needed that 50 grand. But there was 40 people in that room that needed help and I wasn't able to do it the way that I wanted to do it because the government legislation changes. So if those people didn't see me before July 1, they would be in a worse off situation. So I had to take the sacrifice as an individual for my partner, for my family, for me, where I am going to significantly struggle because of that event to help someone else. But you know what the turnaround of that is? In 2 weeks' time, there's another 40 people. And this business is going to take a sacrifice for 6 months, but hopefully that sacrifice is going to bring me more income and more clients in the long term. So I think everyone listening to this you have to decide what the sacrifice looks like to you. And I told my partner and I said, look, babe, like, this is what I have to do. And she's like, that's fine. If you need money, if you need me to pay for this, that's cool. And I look at my personal drawing account of the salary that I pay myself, and believe it or not, like what's wealthy to me, that question is I sometimes can't go out and buy myself that lunch because I know that the investment in the business and the client has a better ROI for my big long-term goal. So I think everyone listening to this, you really need to pick your sacrifice. And if your sacrifice is that you don't want to take up a second job, you change your end result. If your sacrifice is that you don't want to relearn something or set up a social media or start a podcast or write that email, or write that book or begin that training program, like you are responsible for that. It's not going to be easy, nothing good ever is. So, I hope that answers that question indirectly again.
Yes. And I think, to your point too, understanding what sacrifice you want to make. And if, for example, the choice of a second job to generate more income, if you don't want to make that sacrifice and you need to change your end goal, then that's okay as well. it's nothing to beat yourself up about because it's clearly just not something that is so important to you that you'll move mountains for. And I think there's a lot of people get stuck in the shoulds. This is what I should be doing, or it needs to look a certain way, and I need to do this. If it doesn't align with what you're willing to invest, your values, or you're prepared to do, or if it just doesn't feel good, know that it might not be the opportunity for you. It might not be the best thing for you, and only you can determine that.
100%. And, like, if I was saying, like, I'll never forget when strategy calls were like $49. I'll never forget when strategy calls were free and I had to beg and post people to book one. And I woke up one day on Monday and I looked at my calendar and I had 2 strategy calls every day and a strategy session at night. And I was like, I don't want to go to work. I was just like, this is what I thought I wanted. I genuinely thought I would be happy generating this income, making people pay for these phone calls. But I was like, I'm repeating myself over and over, doing the same thing. I'm presenting the same things in strategy sessions. It feels like Groundhog Day. So I either had to be miserable and make the additional 50, 60, 80, $100,000 a month. And they're like, how can you feel miserable making 50 grand a month? I thought I genuinely, I called my best mate and I was like, bro, I think I'm depressed. I don't want to get out of bed. He's like, what's wrong? I was like, my calendar's full. He's like, isn't that great? I was like, I don't think so. Because the mission of what the business was supposed to be, which is to help as many people as possible achieve their financial future as best as possible, wasn't going to be accomplished by running 3 meetings a day. So the sacrifice, income for the bigger goal. So I could have just rode the wave, made an additional 50 grand a month. Anyone listening to this, 50 grand times 12 of personal income, it's a good income. But I was miserable. And when I walked out of that event on Wednesday, I felt so good. $50 a ticket. It probably cost me more to put on the event. I don't know. I didn't cash flow it. I should have.
Coming from a financial
Yeah.
advisor.
So I thought that money was going to make me happy and it didn't. So I think anyone doing this, when you're earning that money and it's not making you happy, you need to stop too. So I'm earning less money and I'm so much happier and I can't wait till the next event next Wednesday.
And at what point did you come to that realization? It was the filling your calendar booked out and earning income, or were you getting little hints before? At what point did you realize that money wasn't going to make you happy?
I think I've gone through this cycle in different times, but unfortunately there have been needed things that I needed to cover, tax bill or needed mum's unit, like things that I didn't care. I was like, I just have to put my fucking head down, do the calls, grind this thing. Like Myth yesterday after the event, and even if this person's listening to this, I'm sorry, but we're not going to mention the name, but I was like, meeting with me one-on-one doesn't make sense. I was like, everything I'm telling you on the phone is exactly what I'm going to tell you into the session. Like, I'm going to sit down in this session. I'm going to tell you everything on the phone. And the session's $1,000. And they're like, that's fine. And I was like, okay, that's okay. Right. So for me, I'm like, there are going to be people that want to pay me an astronomical amount of money to just hear what I'm saying right now, face to face. And that will help me potentially create that gap. And that was a conversation I had with myself. But I think what my issue is, I either go full left or full right. I think it's finding the balance in the middle of being like, you know what? I need X income to ensure that I cover my necessary needs. So I need to commit a certain level of work that I don't necessarily want to do. And anyone listening to this podcast, no matter what you do, no matter how much you love your job, there's always going to be something you hate doing, right? Like,
Oh,
Myth, what's something you hate
100%.
about this podcast apart from having someone like me where everything cuts out, the phone falls? Like, what do you hate about this podcast?
Hate is a strong word, but what grinds my gears because I'm not good at it yet is the editing for sure. So I think if you hate something, ask yourself why you hate it. Is that a nice blind spot for you to dig into? But also, it's okay to hate things and do them
Yeah.
anyway.
Or outsource it.
Yeah,
So,
100%.
but it's hard in the early.
That's the sacrifice I'm
No,
not willing
because
to
like
make.
maybe this podcast isn't necessarily income producing for you immediately, right? So
100%.
it's one of those things for me as well. It's like, oh my God, I have to do this. It's like, can I afford to hire someone to do it? No, shut up, do it. You know? Yeah.
Yeah,
And then I
pretty
come into the
much.
office on Saturday. I'm like, I'm going to do it today. And then it's like 4 hours later. It's like, ah,
That was a good
yeah.
show.
It never ends. It never ends. It's a constant battle with this
Yeah.
to anyone listening. It's no matter who you are, no matter where you are, you're always going to be in this position. And you just have to keep going.
And so, what's some goals that you're working on? I know you're the sort of person that if we were to say, what are you going to be doing in a year or so's time? And we actually looked back at this recording, you will have done it. You're just that sort of person. So, what are you working on at the moment?
Since day one, I've always said the only reason we exist is not because we have all the answers. It's because we know what questions to ask. So tirelessly working on a platform that knows how to ask questions and help people find their questions. So, the answers are out there, and with something like ChatGPT and stuff like that, you can type in a question and it'll give you the answer, and it's quite accurate, to be fair, especially in the financial advice room, because it is just legislation, So I think it's really helping people find their questions on a bigger scale. And, that event is a good example of that, as opposed to one person in the room finding their questions, we had 40. So if we can scale that on a bigger scale and have a platform and a system, and I think that's ever evolving. So I think what success looks like to me is to have a platform that helps people find their questions, not necessarily gives them answers, but helps people find their questions, and then having a route in order to help find the answers or providing the answers, you know. So to answer your question
Beautiful.
in a visual way, if anyone's ever been, have you been to an Apple store, Mick?
Yes.
Okay. 3-level Apple store usually.
Come on, I'm from Canberra. It's just one level, but yes, we have an Apple store.
Well, Apple stores work like this, where you have a place where you can just sort of play with things and do it yourself. And I guess for me, that's the vision. So think 3 floors, bottom level, where you can sort out your own super, you can apply for your own home loan, you can do your own property research, you can do your investment research. And then there's a mid-level where there's events and sort of more deeper information sessions. And then there's geniuses upstairs where you something's wrong. Like you dropped your phone in water, you can even take it apart yourself, but you're probably going to stuff it up. You can soak it in rice, but it didn't quite work. So I guess that's what it is evolving that 3-tier approach, which we have. And I'd like to have the goal is to, we're on George Street in Sydney at the moment. The goal is to have an office with no branding, where everyone just looks in and goes, what the hell are these guys doing in there? And they just waltz in and they're like, oh, this is cool. I just sorted out everything that I needed to pay a financial advisor for in 15 minutes. That's the goal. So we're almost there. So that's the goal.
I look forward to
Thank you.
visiting one day.
If you can find it, because it won't have a sign. Yeah.
That I'd be like walking up and down George Street, being
That-
like, "Fuck, is it?" I'll probably see you in there on like an erg or something like that, and be like, "Of course." Awesome. And so, if someone's looking to start their wealth creation journey, what's something that they can do in the next 24 to 48 hours that can really set them up for success
Yeah,
on
100%.
this?
This one's my favorite. So grab a pen, grab a paper, and write down 5 things that are stressing you out the most, or 5 things you want to achieve on that piece of paper, and then break them down in detail. Then cross off everything but the first one. And then think about one thing that you can do in 24 hours to put you closer to solving the first one or finding the answer to the first one. That's it. Rinse, repeat.
Love it. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for your time and for sharing your story and for being so open and honest. I didn't expect anything less from you, but thank you so much.
Mick. What's your advice to me? Just out of curiosity.
What
Like everything,
area?
I think you as a client, like with your partner and yourself, like, me, like knowing how I operate and like open feedback. Like what would you tell me as someone that's written your book?
Mm. To stay true to your values and to trust your gut. I think you do that already. And I think it's really easy to be swayed. And you touched on a couple of things in here. Just, sometimes you just need to get shit done. But I think your values are really pure and genuine. And I think your gut is very spot on. And so that would be my advice.
Thank you.
is
So
to do that.
basically, stop doing everything that makes me immediate money immediately and just keep it. Go back to Makona coffee.
100% if that's what that one enables you to be aligned with your values. But no, I think what makes you an incredible human is all the things that you mentioned in this podcast. And so continue to align with that. And I know you'll
Thank
get
you.
to
I
your
think
own
if
goal.
anyone wants to find me, the first thing that you need to do is do that paper exercise. And I think as you do that exercise, if it's meant to be, we'll find each other, you know? So if I appreciate being on this podcast, I appreciate everything you do. I've actually, walked through your book and worked through some of the exercises. I think they're amazing. But anyone that doesn't have it, as a financial advisor, as weird as it is, I need advice and I need money friends and I need to be prompted. And it's crazy to think that in 3 years of my life, I haven't done an exercise like that. It's sad. So no matter who you are, no matter where you are, Myth, I also want you to know that someone somewhere is also looking at you as a leader. And I think the things that you do, doing this podcast, doing the book, I think, I'm inspired by it. So thank you. My clients inspire me every day, and what you've done and your journey on this I think it's phenomenal. And the fact that you keep going and you keep pushing, I think anyone listening to this you're very grateful to have, you should be very grateful to have someone like this, there by your side and providing this content, even though that it might not necessarily be making them any money. So thank you, Myth. I appreciate that too.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining me today for another episode of the Actually You Can podcast. I so enjoy having you here, and I hope you've taken away powerful insights and tools that will support you to achieve your high-level results. Now, before you go apply all this wisdom in your life, I would be so grateful if you are able to leave us a podcast review on the platform that you're listening to, or share this episode with a friend. Your support means that we can help more self-led, high-performing individuals just like you expand what's possible for them. I'd also love to hear your thoughts on today's episode, so please go on and shoot me a note on socials and let me know what you think. You can find me on Instagram as Myth Galloway. Now, go and make those dreams a reality, because actually, you can. Speak to you soon.